Okay, what we got?
So we have no action items, but there's a number of things I wanna kinda update you about. Kinda ask some questions about. First thing, I guess, is next week I'm gonna be gone to Boise. I'm being training at the local highway association meeting. It's IACers and Idaho Association of Highway Districts. So I'll be in Boise next week except for Monday.
That's when Pam Alexander's coming over. I think we can get somebody who's up to speed on that.
Okay, I thought she was coming today, but
No, she couldn't make it, so she suggested next week.
okay, I'll get with David about it then and update him on what that is.
It's mostly just to hear what their concerns are.
Okay. You probably saw the revised PUP ordinance that came through.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Okay, so I think Austin and Weston and I are pretty close on that. There's a couple different things that he emailed me back late last evening on clarification on what that violation and how do I document and what that would look like, but so I haven't gone through all of that yet, but we're pretty close on this ordinance. And we had to change the name of it basically because we're not trying to regulate nor control the utility easement behind the right of way.
Just the right of way.
Just
I
the right
saw
of way.
Weston was kind of confused about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well,
we
yeah,
chatted
yeah.
about that yesterday for a while.
Yeah, because we never claimed that we could control it outside the right of way.
well. I never claimed that, but that was kind of the direction that the ordinance was headed because it was called the Public Utility Easement Ordinance. And so that whole thing had to change around. Kind of along the same lines as Weston has another revised draft of that Intermountain Packing agreement for that. So we're still working through that whole agreement, figuring out what fees that we associated with the dumping of that. I'm still unsure about what those fees would be in the different classifications. I've met with Blair about how much is coming, and so we could use the same types of fees for multiple different people. He's trying to research how much those dump trailers would be. Cause evidently what I had down there is up to 3 yard and 3 to 5 yard and above 5 yard probably won't work. And so I guess they're too small or something, so. I'm still trying to gather information about how we break down that cost. And what those fees are for accepting that type of waste from an industrial user. And we'll have to have those fees in place before we sign the agreement with them.
How soon can you get that done?
I hope to have numbers soon, but I don't know when. He was gonna check with how big those dump trailers are and see if he can actually go out to Intermountain Packing and see what the size of their trailer is. And he's been doing other stuff too. So.
You suggested once to weigh a few of them and then do it by the pound.
We could do it by the ton and weigh a few of them. It's just, it doesn't set up the fee very well unless we only go with the tonnage. So you can do it one way, or you can do it kind of the other way, and it's based on the size of the trailer, not necessarily how much the trailer weighs.
What are we charging this fee for? What is the charge covering? What expense of ours is this fee covering?
So the expense of dumping anything up there should cover the cost of the operation. And what
They're
that
already
operation,
being charged.
I don't think they are being charged. That's the thing, they're not being charged right now.
Okay.
They don't have a
They're being
landfill
charged
assessment.
for their municipal waste, right? Their dumpster that they have, their household.
They're
waste.
probably their household waste, but
Because
not
they have
for
a
this.
dumpster there.
Yeah,
But this goes beyond that.
this goes beyond that, yeah. It's a lot more volume, it's a lot more waste, and they are not being charged for it right now.
Okay,
And that's the same as we have for any other business that comes across. That's why I wonder if the weight wouldn't be the best way to do it.
If we can get an average weight of a couple of the trailers and just kind of standardize it. That might be an easier thing for them, but does that work for? In the future for other situations that they might not even have. A pickup load full of stuff.
yeah, and I'm afraid you'll get somebody up there that. You'll be charging him for this weight, he'll say, no, I just weighed it,
Yeah,
it's 300 pounds less,
yeah. And we're charging by the ton, so how do you get?
So I don't think you can charge. I think it's got to be by volume. Cause you can pretty well calculate the volume of any.
We
given
can
trade.
calculate the volume, but that's where that size of the dump trailer. What I had broke down was from 0 to 3 yards and 3 to 5 and above 5. And evidently Blair said, well, that's way too small.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what is it? I mean, I don't know what it is.
Well,
It shouldn't take them that long to
yeah,
just find out.
It shouldn't take him that long if he can concentrate on that versus the other stuff, so,
Well, we're gonna go over a list of
yeah,
things on the cast. that we need to concentrate on.
yeah. Well, and he's trying to make sure that we can get that rain shield up there and trying to make sure we can. Where's, there he is, so.
All right, good, over you, good. We're discussing
You're discussing me? I hope not.
the size of the trailers and how we're gonna find that out as soon as.
For
possible.
Intermountain Packing, those dump trailers, you are gonna look into the sizes.
Oh. I still think that one he was loading was bigger.
oh yeah, definitely bigger, I'm thinking that was probably a 30-foot,
Yeah, that end, and it was an end up.
yeah, 30-foot end dump.
Yeah.
But what yardage is that? Is that a 15 cubic yard? Is that a 10? I'm not sure.
And a lot of that's gonna be delegated by, weight.
Well,
that
the
stuff-
yardage won't. The
If that
yardage
stuff's
is the volume of
super
the trailer.
heavy, then they'll only fill it half full. You see what I'm saying? So the yardage would be different
Yeah, but the other.
if it's only half full versus the full.
The other fees that you have, on there are based on volume.
Yeah,
Either
right.
use it or you don't.
We have 40 yards
By the
or
ton.
$40 per ton or $200 per load is the current established thing. And $200 a load to deal with the amount of waste isn't enough to cover it. That's why we're trying to look at that tiered system.
Did Leanne send you that?
She sent me some of the loads. However, the loads just tell me the days and the stuff, and it's basically, they have 2 trucks.
Yeah.
And one truck doesn't weigh as much as the other truck does, and so,
One's a 12 yard and one's a 14.
but it was like 7 tons. And the other one was like 5 tons.
Yeah.
For those semis.
Who is
But-
this?
So Leanne is the secretary, and she said, this is from Ursa.
Yeah.
These
This
are
is
the
what
trucks
Ursa
they
is, yeah.
sell.
Yeah,
But I didn't know what yardage they were, I just had the tonnage on there,
yeah,
or they're, what they did is they weighed it a couple different times and got an average
yeah, I think. they did
poundage
6
for that,
six
so it's
different
not,
loads, so we
it's
could
not
get it.
weighed every time.
But I thought that's what you were gonna do with Intermountain.
What we talked about, that is an option, or come up with a tiered system if they couldn't weigh it. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to do the tiered system.
They might not be able to, you said you don't want them weighing every load because it puts.
I don't want them weighing every load because it smells and it's potential for all sorts of other problems.
Yeah, if he slams on the brakes or gases on it like they do at that stop sign over there, why?
Could we
They
just
could
do
spread that all over the place.
a length of trailer? So,
Well, a length of
He
trailer,
has a tiered system kind of set up as size or length, you know, so.
but the length of trailer depends on whether it has big sides on it, or whether it's a flatbed, because we're trying to cover a farmer that comes up here with a cow on a flatbed trailer too. And so if you go lengths, then it doesn't work.
Yeah, but could you do per animal?
Well,
For the
you could
smaller
do for
volume.
the small stuff per animal, but then it won't work for Intermountain Packing because it's not per animal. I'm trying to come up with a way to do it that is fair to everybody without specifically targeting one person.
Well, like you and I talked before, I still think we need to make it. I don't think we want to regulate. How do I say this in a political way? I don't think we need to over-regulate the guy at Intermountain Packing and make it harder for our current people to dispose. They're meeting the criteria that's necessary to be able to dump on the landfill, so I don't wanna over-regulate this gentleman and make it harder on them. We know that this guy is going to be troublesome.
Well, that's why we're trying to come up with this.
Right, and I
Agreement
understand that, but
that
these other
with him.
guys are complying and they're doing it the way that they were asked to do. And they're following it to the T. So to overregulate them. So that
Well,
we can keep a handle on
I
this
don't
guy,
think
I
we're-
just don't think it.
I don't think we're talking about coming up with a user agreement for all of those individual people. We're talking about a significant industrial user
Right,
or provider of waste, and so we're not trying to overregulate all the other little guys. We're trying to make sure that the regulation for Intermountain Packing is enough to deal with that individual, but also be clear enough on how our fees are structured that it could relate to others.
I worry that if you. I mean, I guess by us sending the wastewater treatment information over was to kind of establish what. They pay.
Well, they're
Because
delivering,
you can't overcharge this guy or he'll just lawyer up and come back, so.
well, and it wasn't about that, so I got the information to see how much volume they are providing to us. And they're delivering waste material approximately probably 30 yards a week average. Ursa, yeah.
Cause they press like twice a week and we get 3 trucks.
You get about 3 trucks a week
but
average,
they should be charged as well, right?
They are.
I mean, are you saying that?
but they're charged the $40 per ton.
Yeah.
Based on an average load that was measured 2, 3, 4 years ago.
No, we've checked them since then.
Okay.
We have them weighed periodically just to make sure that, you know, this stuff's still averaging.
Well, and that's,
What is
I
it?
don't know that.
Right, yeah,
So,
no, yeah, we are.
so they're delivering essentially close to 30 yards. And it's probably, the big truck is a little over 7 tons, the small truck is 5 tons. So you're probably getting 14, 20 tons a week.
And you're already charging that.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah,
they're
no,
charging them
they
based on
pay, yeah,
$40 a ton.
based on that tonnage.
But if we're gonna, look at a higher cost per ton to match the others, you know, that'd raise the cost at our.
If we go through this similar operation and create an agreement with them, yeah, I probably would.
Well, they need to sign an agreement. You know, the balance, you know, I mean, we end up. Hi, Danny, can I call you back? Can I call you back? Okay, bye. you know, what they're charging us to dump the leachate, you know, the balance sheet comes out pretty heavy in their favor.
Well, it does, and so that, again, it's, if we wanna stick with the $40 a ton, we have that as an established fee. I'm just not sure that that rate is covering the ability to deal with the sludge up at the hill.
If he was going to use his dump trailer, that would be a because of the amount of the volume that they can put on that dump trailer, that would probably be a significant, I mean, a call, you know, the $200 would be enough. Now, if he's gonna pull 3 of those end dumps in there at a time.
Well,
that
that's
might
what
not
I'm
be quite
trying to
enough.
make sure that
So-
we, I don't know what he's gonna deliver, but that's why I'm trying to have the fee right, and I'm
right.
trying to have the agreement with him. So that we don't end up 6 months from now coming back, this is all a mistake and we shouldn't have done it.
But I think,
Excuse me, go ahead.
yeah, no, we're just wanting not to 6 months from now say, where are we on this?
Yeah,
Why don't we call him and ask him how many tons and deliver? Let's find out. I mean, let's find out from him. He probably has an idea. If he doesn't, then I'll tell him we need to know.
What does it cost us to handle the sludge disposal? If they bring up 20 tons,
It's as much cost of space up on the landfill too.
but is there a way we can figure that out? I guess is what I'm asking, what it's costing.
The cost would go way up if you're trying to come up with that.
Yeah, they couldn't afford to pay what it's costing us,
To take care of them.
honestly.
But how about if we just take the fee, we don't have to advertise, implement it, get it going, and then evaluate the fee? You know, otherwise we're gonna be having this discussion 6 weeks from now.
I mean, Blair, if he falls under the guidelines, quits playing the shenanigans that he's played in the past, if he, you know, gets compliant and brings it, would you be happy with $40 a ton, just like Ursa?
but that's what this significant industrial user agreement is to do, to make sure that he's coming under those regulations.
Yeah, the
Right.
fee is secondary. That's why if the fee's not gonna be enough after you evaluate it, we can adjust the fee.
And Lance, if he does it, then why not charge him the same we're charging Ursa?
You have to.
Well, I think yeah, I have.
$40 a
Lance
ton's enough.
Lance
guess.
and I have talked about that as well. I mean, it has to be similar. It has to be the same. Because if not, he's just gonna
But
wear.
then we can review it for both.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
otherwise you have to advertise for a new fee and you have to do the whole thing. And I think the key is to get the agreement together so that the guy can start dumping, because if he violates, he's out.
So,
And if that's just a different direction than I've heard from you before. So if we want to go that way, I think
it would be simpler just to come up with a fee. But apparently isn't.
it's not, no.
yeah, it's a little, yeah.
I mean, I can
It's a little
see
bit more
why,
difficult.
but again, if $40, if you're happy with $40 for Ursa, why
Right.
shouldn't we be happy with $40 for Intermountain if they meet the same standards?
It's the fee for Ursa was pulled out of the air.
And if you're not
Uh,
happy with that, then let's raise it.
Kevin, well, the fee for Ursa is based off of what we do.
Based
on
off of
Peterson.
mixed loads up in
Yeah.
Peterson.
I mean,
It wasn't,
it's always been based off of what we dispose of it.
But if there needs to be something else for the extra testing and things like that, we can evaluate it, do it till then.
okay,
The important thing is to get them on the agreement so that if they violate, they can't come up. And I think that'll take care of the issue you've got with,
well, and that's, if that's the direction we want to go, I think it'll make getting the agreement finalized up with Weston pretty quick. And we'll get it over to the start.
that would be my preference.
I think it makes sense.
I think we need to make sure though, and I know Lance, I've seen some of the drafts that they've been passing back and forth, and this thing's gotta have some teeth.
Well, that does,
Because we know what this
that's,
We know what this gentleman
I
is
know,
capable of.
but that's why I say if you get the agreement in and he violates the terms of that agreement, he can't dump, and then he's gotta go to Burley or wherever else he's doing.
But that's what gets complicated too.
Yeah.
To have enough teeth in
Yeah,
there, it complicates that agreement.
it does, and that's what he say, I've seen the drafts, and you guys are trying to put some teeth in this thing.
But that teeth will be in effect for everybody, person. That will be in effect
So
for the
the
smaller.
teeth in the agreements individualized to the individual user. They can, though, that teeth, the
Right.
conditions will be individualized. But that's where you get the teeth is in that agreement and the language of the agreement.
And if they violate, because the standards are gonna be slightly different for us than they are for this. And that's where the flexibility for you to set those standards and make the agreement.
Well, and I think that's what's taking some time is trying to figure out how to make those standards stringent enough, but yet not violate his, make it more for him than others, I guess.
Well,
Honestly, if he would come to the table and toe the rope, okay, we're all over. We already deal with this other stuff.
This agreement's
But if
gonna
he
make
has-
him do that,
But
right?
if he has these little shenanigans,
Yeah, I
this
get
is
that.
not gonna work. But when you ask him not to come back, is he gonna lawyer up and we'll be back to
no,
square
if he's
one again?
violating the terms of the agreement that he's signed.
And that's why we have to have the agreement.
Right. I just took a wild guess. I mean, if he's hauling 15 tons in one of those trailers he was filling when we were out there, and he does that twice a year. Or twice a week.
Probably twice, he could, depending on what he had out there, I bet it's gonna be more than twice a week. I
Well, if
think
it's
it's,
twice a week on 45 weeks a year, so it's gonna be much more than this. That's $54,000.
Yeah.
So I mean. $40 adds up. And
Most,
most,
I've just been over here scrolling through other places in Idaho, what they charge for sludge disposal, and most of them are $20 or $30 a ton.
so we're charging.
We're
40.
already higher than what, I mean, Ada was like 27, there was a few others, but it seems like we're already higher than what a majority of others are.
The agreement is, I understand them now, is written so that if they don't do the drying, if it comes in with liquid, you can turn them away.
Yeah.
And that avoids, him lawyering up and trying to force us to take it.
Yeah.
Because it has to meet those federal standards, or you turn him away.
Right.
It takes the,
takes the guesswork out of it, it
Yeah.
takes the subjectivity of a person up at the
That's-
hill.
I was trying to think whether to say subjectivity or objectivity, but yeah, it does. But
One of the biggest heartburns I have with the current agreement, I haven't seen the one they have now, but the one that Lance sent out here. I don't know, it was 3 drafts ago, I guess, or whatever. Anyway, it specified that our guys were gonna do paint filter tests on that. I'm not going to ask her.
We took that out.
That's gnarly.
they do-
I took that out.
I thought, yeah, cause I thought you were looking now to, you do a visual. And if they've dumped those toads or something on top
On the
of that,
top, it won't pass the visual.
yeah. But then they also have to provide you.
So they had to keep
certification.
documentation of the dewatering process and what the percentage is of the moisture content of it.
So
And-
what if we ask them to provide that for every load and they give it to the guy on the hill when they don't?
I thought you were gonna do that,
Yeah,
but
me
it was
too.
done within a certain amount of time. So it doesn't sit there for 2 days and settle out.
Well. So we talked about providing that, but I'm not sure. How he can provide that on the spot if they have, they're finishing loading a truck. And then they send it out.
How do they know it meets?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That's-
how do they know?
That's what I'm trying to
Well,
understand.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if he knows that, if he's making the requirements, if he's conditionally making that requirement throughout the load, he should be able to document that and send it with the load.
And if we wanna put that he has to carry that documentation with the load and deliver it, I'm okay with putting that in there. I don't
think-
know
I think
whether,
he does, I think he needs to provide it, cause it's no different than asbestos, I mean, when we take a demo, they bring the paperwork, they have that paperwork with them to show. And they actually sent it earlier, obviously they can, he can't, but I still think he needs to provide.
I don't think that's too much to ask.
I don't either.
We already, I mean, the wastewater people provide theirs, now it's totally different than what you're asking this.
do
guy
they
to do.
provide it each time?
No, but they sent us
They
a letter
would.
that says they exceed,
But they also call ahead.
yeah.
Well, and that's in the
He's gonna be
things
asked
too,
to
to
do
call
that.
ahead and
The
and
first time he
schedule.
does it.
You may not cancel his ability to do it, but if he doesn't call ahead, you turn him away.
And I had in there, if he's turned away, all of that material has to be rerun through the screw press to make sure it does meet before it comes back up.
See, I think those are reasonable requests, but why don't we just do it on the $40? Cause, you know, based on that,
Okay,
And we could, you could put in there. That they need to weigh on a certified scale, they could weigh at KJ's,
yeah, but,
and they wouldn't have to cross our scale.
well, but
We really don't want them on our scale.
why? If they're leaking,
Have
they're
you
not gonna
smelled
make it
it?
anyway. When it's been processed,
pretty
it's not
gnarly.
bad.
Well, it's,
And all
That
you're
stuff's
gonna do
pretty
is
bad.
put them across the scale, they'll go in, turn around, go back out. And just a sample weight.
It's interesting, Blair. The stuff that they've spilled on the roads and what they took to you was terrible. The stink was awful. But when we were out there and visited, the stuff he said he was gonna bring us, remember, I took a handful of
Oh,
it
yeah.
and smelled it.
yeah,
And it was just a faint blood smell. It didn't stink at all. And
Yeah.
so he was bringing us something different that he represented.
well, he was bringing those.
and that's
totes
what
yeah.
that's what. I'm really trying hard not to get to the position where he just takes everything up there.
Right.
and- and
If he
hides stuff
brings what
on-
he showed us that day, it doesn't stink and it's fine.
But I think you've,
Yeah,
But you
that's
put
what
a
he-
little heat with it.
I think you've got the principles.
Honestly, I think what happens is when they process that and they put it outside, now it might not be as bad in the winter time because it takes heat to get that.
So it sits there in the heat.
But it
and
sits in
starts
that
rotting.
trailer.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But that's why.
So I'll reference in there for the amounts based on the adopted fees for mixed loads at Peterson landfill. I mean, that's already an established fee and I won't put the dollar figure in there, I'll based on the adopted fee, and that way, if we change the adopted fee,
Right.
then it changes.
Okay,
I think that makes sense.
yeah, let's just get it moving.
Okay,
Beat. I hate to beat this farther, but my only concern is when you say a visual of that and that you guys do a visual of it. That's the settling. And if you've got,
He's gonna have to deal with it, that's,
But-
it's, if. we're
but he
gonna
brings
get-
you documentation that he passed the paint builder test and everything was done, and then he gets up there.
If it settles out, it's not done. If he's pressing that to the point that he's dewatering it, to the point that he was showing us, which you and I both know, they tightened the screws on that baby when we were there.
Yeah, they-
To prove a point.
But he's got,
But if it settles out and gets a sheen on it, it's going back.
he's got the ability to, if that happens, to just process it a little longer.
He has the ability to pull the water out of that.
Okay,
He
I just didn't wanna put us in a position where we have an employee up there that arbitrarily is deciding, well, it's good or it's not good, you know?
And anytime you turn him back, document it with pictures.
if that's the agreement we're gonna have, that he has to meet the criteria and. It has, a visual, it has to pass the visual, if it has a sheen of
Okay.
separation on it, he's not passing the visual.
So let's get that moving.
Okay.
Okay, what's your questions on this other? On the violations, because I thought it was pretty clear.
so I just wanted to understand what a civil violation means. And how do you document it?
Fine.
Well, a civil violation, it results in a fine, but what does it look like?
It's a,
What,
it's a civil violation, meaning that when you send the sheriff out to cite them, it's breaking a county passed ordinance. So on the ticket, they're signing the county, or they're citing what section of the ordinance is violated, why, and then that's why they're fining them, because it's, so that's why they're making it a civil citation, is it's basically in direct conflict with an ordinance that's been passed.
And that's why we're doing the ordinance instead of resolution.
and then as long as I have the document, the paperwork associated with, this is a civil violation, this is your first instance, you're being served by this person or sheriff's deputy.
Please try not to overthink it. You know, work through it, because it
Yeah.
shouldn't be a problem because of the and immediate stop work. That's what we're.
Well, and that's where I wanted to say, the and or is more of a and
Right,
than a or.
this says and.
Well, it says and or.
Weston changed it to
Did he
just
say
and
and?
in the
Okay.
latest version.
Well, and if it says and, then my concern is
Yeah,
taken care of.
and basically on the citation side of things, if the sheriff's gonna go out and cite, it's because we've told them they want him to. And every instance that I've had, Tony's called me and said, what do you want me to write on the ticket?
Yeah.
So he's asking me essentially, what ordinance am I citing to write this violation on? So
Yeah.
it'll work, it's.
I
pretty
just
simple,
hadn't done
so-
that before, so I'm asking questions, to make sure I understand the process.
And if that's the only hang up you've got, we can get ready to go on that too.
Yeah, I think we'll probably move on it next week. Weston said he just wanted a couple more days to think about it, to make sure he was comfortable with everything, but I think we're pretty good there, so.
Like Danny Clark used to say, let it percolate first.
That's, I think, what he was doing, yeah.
Okay,
Weston was trying really hard to get it to be the PUUP ordinance so that we could call it the poop ordinance. That's what he told us yesterday.
okay.
Uh,
You got anything before we?
Solid.
Before, because I want to get into this cast and see where we are.
Okay.
Things.
I've just got one thing for you all today. Sorry I haven't been here the last couple of weeks. We've been busy wrapping up our summer projects. I think we've got pretty much most of them wrapped up except for a splash pad project that we just couldn't get done for the year. So if you ever have the temptation to get into the splash pad business, don't. It's probably the most labor intensive maintenance project we have in the city of Hammond, year by year. It's a really challenging project. But the one thing I wanted to bring to you all today, we had our First Amendment audit of City Hall the other day. Have you guys had one of these? Or are you familiar with what these are? So this is when they have an individual will come to your building and they will bring their camera, video camera, their phone or whatever, and they will insist on videotaping you or your employees, your customers, and all the spaces they can get into that are publicly accessible. And so these have been more common in other places in the country for a while now, and we're seeing more and more of them in Idaho. We haven't had any in the city of Hammond yet, but we have had a few in the state and other places. And so we were ready for it. We took an ICRIP training, ironically, last week on First Amendment audits. And then on Monday morning, we had an individual come into the Public Works building. And this man was covered head to toe, not a scrap of skin showing. He had a mask on, sunglasses, hat, long sleeves, work boots. And he just walked in and he started asking the front desk person more questions. Questions he was asking were completely harmless. And he wasn't in any way aggressive or mean. He was just covered from head to toe, looking pretty creepy. And he had kind of a Halloween pumpkin skeleton mask thing, just creepy. And the individual there she took care of him. She said, you need to speak to somebody at City Hall. So then he came over to City Hall. By the way, he arrived on a bicycle. Both at Public Works and at City Hall. The individual knew where he was going, at City Hall, and when he went in. When people come to Amherst City Hall, they never know what they're doing. If they're there for the first time, they always have to ask for directions. And this person walked through the front door and went straight to our downstairs door, which is where he was heading to speak to somebody, which tells us the individual knows where they're going. They've been there a few times. And they went down the basement and spoke to a few employees there, videotaped them the whole time. Everybody did really well. We just went through that training. So basically they ignored him, didn't acknowledge that he was covered from head to toe, and took care of him like he did a customer. He was actually looking for me, and I was not there. I was in a different meeting. And so he was frustrated with that. And after he spoke to as many people as he could in City Hall, he went out in the parking lot and videotaped every car, work and personal, license plates, front and back, went to all the windows, back window, front window, taped all the interiors, zoomed in. I watched all this on surveillance afterwards. And we were able to see through our surveillance cameras the moment he arrived on his bike at Public Works to when he got to City Hall. And basically we were able to see him every step of the way. So we know what he did. He did spend a lot more time on two specific vehicles in our parking lot. That was our code enforcement officer's vehicle and one of our employees' vehicle that drives a Lexus. And he really liked that Lexus a lot. He probably spent several minutes just getting all the detail he could on that car. After that, he walked up to the building and he said to himself, he didn't know that he was being taped, but he said to himself, well, it looks like I'm going to have to come back tomorrow and do this all over again. And so he left, and that was basically the end of it. But as a result, we kind of brought the team together. A lot of people were nervous about it. What's he doing taping my car? I've got pictures of my kid in my car. It made a lot of people really, really uncomfortable. And so we put in place a few other things that the iCrypt video recommended, like, code words when things like that happen, and a group text when things like that happen. What's ironic is they thought that I set it up. So when I got back from my meeting, everybody's like, oh, that guy was really good. And I said, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, this guy came and you found a really good person to test this on. I said, I'm sorry, that was no test. I don't know who that was. So he hasn't been back, but I just wanted you guys to be aware. The sheriff's office came over and looked through the videos, and they're aware of a couple of incidents like this with the city of Idaho Falls. And they felt like that this guy at that time was not a threat, but that if he ever came back, they would be very concerned. And so they want us to let them know if he ever comes back.
So it's illegal for somebody to film cars like that and zoom into the interior?
Yeah, so the training on iCrimp,
That's a personal vehicle. That surprises me.
yeah, so they call it the First Amendment audit training. And these folks, they call themselves First Amendment auditors. And basically what iCrimp said is, if there's any expectation of privacy, like in your personal driveway or in your front yard or your backyard, then they can't come into your yard and take you. But if there's no expectation of privacy, like you're parked in a public parking lot or in the mall parking lot or in a gas station, they can do that. Yeah, they can go around and take whatever they want. Be super annoying.
What kind of questions was he asking your employees?
He's actually asking our questions about our pressurized irrigation ordinances. Nobody ever asks about that.
Yeah.
So really unusual question, totally harmless, and everybody that he spoke to could have probably addressed his questions really well, but they chose to basically send him to me, which is what we told him to do. And so that's why he eventually was like, well, I gotta speak with Mike. It's gotta be first face to face. I'm not gonna call him. It's gotta be face to face. And he hung around until he, I guess, got bored. But they're looking for reactions. they're looking for people to be defensive and, um, you know, uncomfortable. And that's what they want to post online, is they want clicks, you know,
That's why they do this.
that's why they do it.
It's just like a TikTok thing.
That's right. They're trying to post something online that brings attention, negative attention to the jurisdiction. And then they get clicks for that. You know, City of Ammon, what a bunch of jerks, check this out. And then people give them attention. So I don't think we gave them anything to post. Everybody was pretty chill. But the officers did say that be on the lookout, these things are more common. And to be proactive about it.
I need
So-
to ask Sam about that. Would they let him through our security and then the building if somebody showed up dressed like that?
Absolutely. Well, good question. I
need
don't
to
know
ask
about your
that.
security.
I don't think Dane Watkins, I don't think the judges would be happy with that. They would
Yeah.
feel that there's not enough level of, high enough level of security for someone who's dressed like that.
Yeah.
But I'll ask Sam.
That's a great question. iCurrent did say that if your places, if your offices and hallways and whatever are clearly labeled like staff only, they can't enter those. And so they recommended being proactive about it and saying, hey, if you don't want them going past your lobby, label everything else staff only. And we've done that. We didn't actually have it done for Monday, but we did label that now. So if that person came back, the only place they could go to would be the lobby in City Hall.
Do you have to say something like staff only unless accompanied by staff or?
Yeah, so how we've listed it, in our city building, it's pretty small, so it's pretty easy to manage that way, but we've got our downstairs door that's just says staff only by appointment only.
Okay.
And so, and it's not necessarily the regulars that we're trying to keep out, it's just these strangers that don't know where they're going. We want to be able to call someone up from downstairs, they can meet the customer and then bring them down to the office.
Boy, somebody has
crazy.
too much free time on their
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. You know, and what a gallery, you know? Head to toe covered.
Yeah.
And they changed their voice too. So we got them speaking at 3 different times. And they had a different voice each time.
Okay.
So anyway, that was fun. Other than that, just, it's been a great summer for us and thanks for all your support. We got through all the projects we needed to.
Okay,
I do need to sit down with, Tracy, KR, Tracy and whatever soon and talk about winter maintenance a little bit.
When would you like to do that?
You know, I'll actually have, if Tracy can get a hold of KR and schedule that.
Reach out to KR?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys, gonna take over Ammon's snow plowing this year?
I don't think so.
We were hoping you'd do it.
Man, we just have so much fun with it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh, man, it becomes the center of the universe every winter, doesn't it?
Every snowstorm.
Any other questions for me?
Is that the training you're talking about?
No, that one's a little different.
Okay, I just Googled iCrimp.
First Amendment.
First Amendment training, yeah, First Amendment audit,
Yeah,
that's what I got, so iCrimp has a different one then.
you do.
That's one specific thing.
So if you get on your iCrimp, anybody can get on their iCrimp, log into iCrimp and onto your account. And then you just go to the resources page. And they've got so many videos now, you have to search for it and just type in first. Probably all you need to do, but First Amendment, and it'll pull up under a First Amendment audit. And it's an hour-long training. And I think about 15 to 20 minutes of that is questions and answers, but they're good. It's all good information.
I was just gonna say, well, that would be us because we're recording all of our meetings.
Yeah.
The First Amendment group. Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Need me for anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we are
Thanks.
doing the area of impact next,
Yeah, these
Week.
guys have their hearing next Wednesday, so.
okay. Ours is next Thursday, the 2nd. So I don't anticipate there's gonna be any changes. Should go smooth. Perfect.
Have we got anything else for a regular meeting?
So I wanna talk a little bit about
Thanks,
another
Micah.
solid waste issue.
Okay.
So the snow removal. Equipment, Blair has a copy of a price to get a rotary. For use of keeping that basically a mile of road from the gate down into cell 4 open.
Yeah, we drove down in there yesterday and that's a long. Windy road,
Gonna be a stretch.
yeah. We're just getting the road base on it.
Well, yeah, we've been running them haul trucks on there and the contractor ran that same section, but they were working on it. So it's packed down and has inverted, so we're gonna bring it up a foot and then put a crown on it, so the crush might be blocked off. We were fixing some spots where the road had got damaged and then. But that's just gonna be a work in progress.
How much is the rotary?
The rotary is $446,450.
I know you're needing it pretty quick, but we've gotta get this. Judicial confirmation going. Before we can, yeah, keep digging in.
If we,
I know you got the estimate. And we were gonna go over some of the other things, cause, judicial. Well, on the CAS agreement, you know, cause that's gonna make a difference on how hard we can push them. Through the engineers on all the other elements of the CAS that we may or may not be done with. So I just thought we'd go through an inventory of those and see where we were, and what we need to be focusing on, because if we're gonna give a little pushback on that. See, because that's about $2 million. And how much less would it be to go standard that our engineers think
The standard,
that, well, you've got Stephanie and what's the other guy's name?
Travis,
Travis pushing for one standard. And DEQ pushing for the bigger one.
I don't know what that bigger is. I don't know what the difference is.
Well, I thought that was the estimate that they sent.
The estimate is based on their current probable high level altitude planning event of what
So
Up
that's
fall.
there.
that is Great West estimate.
So it could be higher if DEQ pushes.
Yes,
How much higher? How much bigger are they?
I don't have a way to answer that.
well, and I think they're gonna base that off of what kind of winter production. If we get our rain shield on and we can mitigate that leachate issue, they're gonna idle away from that. But if we overtop that pond again, they're gonna make you build a 40-acre pond. But we don't know until we can prove that we can take care of the issue.
What are we building now? That Great West is pushing.
I think they're, the original, the one that we talked about, the very last was another 4 million gallon pond right next to the current pond we have.
Essentially
But we
taking the
double the
existing one
size.
and doubling it.
And they based that off of the snow-till data. Our current pond being empty and the same production that we produced last year. We could, if everything came together, if we had both ponds side by side, we
Okay,
could handle.
well, that's a pretty conservative estimate that, because last year was unique.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm pretty sure she based all that off of those numbers.
Well, I think she based it off the numbers, but she also, the pond that she had, the existing pond. Should have handled it last year and it did.
Well, yeah,
And
Okay,
so that's where,
so that's a pretty good estimate. That ceiling of 2 million.
I think
I think.
I think
bigger
it's a
pond would
good
cost way
estimate.
more.
it probably is not the final number, but it's very good estimate.
Cause that's all we're trying to do to get this thing.
Yeah.
going. You know, cause, if we keep doing these $400 or $500 deals to meet this cast, cause that's one of the things on the cast. And so I think we could justify throwing that in there. You know, but see where we haven't got that underway right now. I don't know if we can retroactively do it. You know, that's why I'm trying to get this done quicker. How long does it take to get the snowboard?
Well, they only have this 148R left. And so we need to tie it up. That's why we're pushing, I guess, so hard right now. We've got a a loader.
We're going to rent a loader to run the rotary
Yeah,
for the winter.
so we've had to tie that up or get it, you know, say, hey, we'll take it. If we do this other thing, we'll take it. But, so I guess one of our questions is within the solid waste budget, you guys have budgeted $2 million in the capital heavy equipment line. Are we allowed to orchestrate that, or? I mean, because right now we have this rotary and a cat.
Well, the problem is you just spent 1.6 million outside of that. To get the.
Tractor.
Right, the shredder,
Yeah.
things like that, so you've already blown outside that.
Oh, that was in last year's budget.
I know, but you overspent last year's budget doing that. You know, so it's not like you can overspend that and then come in and we've gotta have the cash flow, that's where we're concerned.
And that's why we're sitting here
I know,
asking you these questions.
well, that's why I'm pushing for getting, the stuff together for the judicial confirmation, because if we keep spending that, then we don't have cash to operate. And you've gotta have that fall back.
But if we haven't spent that 2 million that we budgeted for this year, isn't that cash there? Isn't that available if you hold off on others so they can get this?
Well, but what are you gonna hold off on? I mean, pretty much have to do it case by case, and if this is your highest priority. You know, you can't be spending any money on engineering for transfer stations or anything like that yet.
Well, and I think this year, the pond is our number one priority. On top of being able to remove the snow. Now, if we knew we were gonna have a nice mellow winter, we'd be in Fat City, but
Okay, so
the unknown is
pond is
killer.
$2 million. You've got about 3.5 million in cash right now. You know, luckily they hadn't done the turnovers. We'll get more in December.
Right.
But they're capital construction versus capital equipment. I mean, they are two different line items, but
Got to do the same pool of cash.
They still
Yeah.
come out at the same
yeah,
time.
I know. I mean,
Okay. Yeah, because you're pulling out of two ponds, and if one
yeah,
sucks out from the other, then the other's gonna be dry, and you still wanna suck out of that.
One comes from Roger's pocket, the other comes from the county's pocket.
Well, we already know which one's empty. That's all.
Yeah, we'll take it out of Blair.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know, I think we've gotta have it, because that's part of our gas thing, it's a problem. But I'm trying to get keep as many of those options open as we can. Or that list that we came up with of your future needs is gonna be limited to just what's demanded right now. You know, you're not gonna do a transfer station expansion for multiple years. You can't have it all.
Well, I guess we need to start telling the public that, because this is eventually going to be mandated by someone. Who, I guess if you can't provide the service that you're asking them to pay for, there may be an upheaval.
That's why we're trying to get the judicial confirmation done.
I
I
totally
hate to beat a
understand
dead
that.
horse, but we've gotta get moving on some of that stuff, just like we talked about with the tires. Cause if we go back to DEQ. And ask them, try to work with them on different exceptions. We're gonna take a listen and look at that list and say, where are you on all these things? Well, you know, we can't keep putting them off. You know, the tires, you know, that's something that should be fairly easy to resolve if we get the hearing set, you know. Well, let's just lay it out there. We've been asking to get that hearing done for 6 weeks. You know, and it's not the city that's dragging, it's us getting it done. And I know there's a lot of other things going. But we've got to get that stuff done, or DEQ, you know, we signed that agreement.
Yeah.
Under duress, but we signed it, so we're gonna have to live by it. But we need to start checking off all of those items that we can check off that are, you know, because I'm looking through here, we've got trainings and a lot of things like that, that you can, record keeping that you can start showing.
The training's already done.
Yeah. And the more of those that you can check off, the easier it's gonna be when we sit down with DEQ and try to, if this local office of DEQ is trying to way over engineer it, and it's outside of what's required, you know, I think we have a chance of sitting down with them and working through it. But not if we lose our credibility by not getting the other stuff done.
So let's go through the CAS and what,
Engineer's evaluation of historical leachate system issues.
I think they're working through that. At
That's-
the end of that meeting, they set up a time and arrangements to meet with their engineer, so.
Okay,
so there's been ongoing discussion between them on that.
and the southern is, you know, and see, those are the ones that tie into that being able to get involved in those ongoing discussions if we need to. The next one's leachate, same with meteorological, leachate storage calculation shall not rely on the hauling of leachate for offsite treatment.
Or we have the agreement, right?
Yeah,
We got that signed agreement done.
That's a separate item, but you know, what they're saying is the standards shouldn't build into that. I mean, you know, we're still gonna use it, we need to.
but I think that's gonna be a hard one to accomplish because of the evaporate, they want you to evaporate that, and I don't think that's gonna, I can't see where we're gonna be, I mean, we'd have to have a 40-acre pond in order to.
But that's why
evaporate.
we've still got the agreement with Person.
That's what,
That's why we still have an agreement to
yeah,
dispose of it.
yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to
And that's-
utilize that, even if he doesn't like it, we're still gonna have to utilize that. Until we can either dry out our landfill or figure out some kind of a treatment.
Right, so a lot of those are in the negotiations of that, but yeah. You know, we understand. Probably not gonna be able to do that where it completely evaporates.
And yeah, there's not enough room up there.
But that's in the bucket of things we can sit down and discuss with them, and try to hold it to what is required by the standard.
And I think that's what Great West Engineering is
Is
going
doing.
back and forth with them on.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't,
but if
I
they go
mean-
back and forth and can't make any headway, we've got the backup of Madison County. Will probably, you know, we can all meet together if it's a standard.
And Great West is the one that's designing that too.
Right,
and it sounds like they have taken another look at Madison counties and they're making them make some adjustments, so.
okay, so the
Great,
ones,
so we drug them into the mud.
Yeah.
so the ones outside of this leachate thing, that's the one that we want to be able to get back in and work with them on. Add snow removal procedures and documentation plan. So I mean, that's what you're trying to accomplish with the snow thing.
Well, we're trying to accomplish our ability to be able to get into the landfill,
Well,
that mile of road.
we're trying to
is gonna take
accomplish your snow removal procedures and documentation.
Right.
Okay. increase the frequency of leachate system monitoring. Have you already been doing that?
We agreed that we'd do it same we always have, so. The agreement of that was weekly.
Okay.
And we do it more than weekly, so. Right now, we're hauling it, so we're watching it daily.
Okay.
And there's a documentation of the level of the pond. That's,
Joel
that's,
brings that down. all
he's doing that weekly, so that's being done.
Okay, in order to comply with 40 CFR, whatever, which requires maintaining less than 30 cm of leachate on the liner and leachate flow. Add a leachate flow probe in phase 4.
We haven't got it there yet because we haven't got
Gotta
it.
have garbage to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. If the leachate impoundment design includes a leak detection system, then add procedures to monitor the system.
And I think it has a leak detection system.
The existing pond does, and the new one will have to have one installed with it.
The new one has one. Or
The new
current-
pond that we're getting ready to construct will have to have one installed with it.
But they come standard that one.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, this one currently has one, but we don't have a,
Okay, it says if the leachate impound design includes a leak detection system, then add procedures
into
for
the
monitoring
operation
the
plan.
system.
for
So
how
you
you're
guys need
monitoring.
to get some of those changes done. Add leachate.
You
system-
added that into the operations plan.
I have not, because Stephanie was gonna come up with a short something.
Okay, that's one we, on the to-do list, make this smaller. Add leachate system monitoring and maintenance activities, including an annual line jetting at a minimum. Submission of those records to DEQ within 10 days.
It's already in there that we do it semi-annual and we've already done it and have that.
And you're getting the documentation of that within 10 days. Right. Okay. Add information about leachate treatment or disposal. Contract. Or remove. Oh, so
And that's
we got the contract, that was an or.
That's
We
kind
got
of
the
a gray area.
We got the contract done, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we've complied with that. And whether they like that or not,
Well, they accepted the letter of the contract, so,
yeah,
So that got sent over to them.
yeah, it was sent over to them.
revise and submit for approval an updated groundwater monitoring plan.
And Catherine has done that.
Okay. Revise and submit for approval leachate overflow sampling report. Once the additional sampling results.
So I think that was still part of Catherine. Catherine had sent that information over to them, I believe.
So
I'm pretty sure that she's already sent that they finished that up with that June, because remember there
Yeah.
was a double June.
I think she sent, Catherine has already sent that all over.
And
Okay.
they actually, their hydrologist and Catherine had a conversation with the DEQ people, and so it sounds like to me they kind of worked all those little issues out, and that's where part of the agreement for the groundwater monitoring language came from.
Who's Catherine?
Catherine. did
She's
wrong.
with Rock Mountain Environmental. They're the ones that do the groundwater testing and monitoring.
Can you just double check?
Yeah.
Make sure it's done. The transfer station submit training records.
Those trainings come and go.
Okay, submit records from the previous 2 years of final disposal or recycling of all waste tires.
We're currently updating that as we go, but we have submitted what we've sent, so they've already got it.
Okay, remove and properly dispose of all waste tires from the property adjacent to the transfer station. That's the one, you know, that when you look at it, say, because we got them to extend it to 180 days and we're not making any progress
We are making some progress, but
on getting rid of tires.
yeah,
You weren't sure. Is the pile decreasing? How much?
Well, we've hauled 7-8 loads of junk out of there, and we've hauled 2 loads of tires out of there. And,
But how many have come in?
we're not getting that many in. This problem is stand over a few years and not being able to get rid of them. We'll get them. Our biggest problem is gonna be our D-rim tire, probably that's gonna cause us the most heartburn, so. Here's what, we'll have to see, we're working on trying to get them D-rim, but there's quite a pile of them, so. I am going to talk to the people in,
Yeah,
at Liberty Tire and see if they would help us with that problem, because they have a D-rim, and they're just gonna charge us
and a little
more.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that goes away, if you, because your capacity of the store goes up, if we get the deal from the city, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, no.
That's-
yeah.
why no?
I just
Well,
look back at that, all we have to give them is a site plan,
and we're working on site plan.
Yeah,
to-
Dave's got that.
cause it's not, it's in the industrial zone, so we don't have to get a CUP, we can just
We
do
do
the
site
site plan. And then once the site plan's approved, and we can start storing there.
Yeah, and I started doing a site plan and I looked at the requirements and what I had wasn't gonna work, and so I've asked David to help me out with some CAD stuff.
Yeah.
And when I talked to that guy at the city, because we're not street front, that's already established and some of that, it should be pretty simple. I mean,
I
he
don't
made
think
it
it'll
sound
be
like
too
it,
challenging.
and it's not gonna be a
Other
visual
than,
We
issue.
just need to get it done.
yeah,
Okay,
So, yeah.
and then the others that they did cover, because they tie that to the leachate too.
Yeah,
And don't they come up and inspect you for that occasionally?
Yeah.
Surprise inspections or
They try to,
they try to surprise you.
they try to be sneaky.
but they're doing the best they can and get the data covered down anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're using way more dirt than we've ever used before, so.
Okay. Well, so it sounds like the two most immediate issues are the snow plow,
Yeah.
rotary. Which, you know, I mean, if you're gonna take that out of the 2 million, just make sure you keep track of the rest of it
I don't,
and say your priorities.
we've already pretty much looked at that, and I think we've got our stuff ironed out to where we'll have those two expenditures plus a couple other smaller ones. Obviously, we do a trailer every year, but unless we have some wipeout, why, I think that the crawler and that rotary is probably the only two major expenses that we'll pull out of there, other than we've been pulling the compactor, that new compactor money out of that as well, so that'd be another 3, so out of that 2 million, I think we have earmarked about $1 million of that to be expended.
And then the other complicating thing is just like the cost that we had. Caleb, we, I think we're down. There's gonna be other costs on all the Jefferson County. Because that takes out of that